Get rid of that. Beautiful. Okay, here we go. Live stream. First one in a while, and we've got a lot of new subscribers. So, if be a new experience for a lot of people. A lot to discuss the last few days. Well, since I last my last live stream. F1 is without a free-to-air TV deal post next year. That's a big one. Liberty Media have got to be very careful how they handle the TV rights. We've seen on the continent, Italy, for example, they're going more pay-per-view. Germany, they've gone more free to air. UK, we don't know what they're going to do. Liberty Media obviously are honouring the contracts that grubby Bernie Ecclestone made when he was in charge of F1. And Bernie Ecclestone made sure he screwed the fans as much as possible, made as much money for himself as possible. So there's that issue to deal with. On the footballing side of things, a lot of stories happening in football over here in Europe. Obviously, Mark Hughes getting sacked and replaced with Hasenhüttl, who takes over tomorrow. So Kelvin Davis will be taking charge of the game tonight. Had Southampton won that game, I think Mourinho would be under more pressure than Mark Hughes was. So that is a make or break for both teams' seasons. The issue with Southampton is they waited too long to bring Mark Hughes in last season. He kept them up last season with a good bit of form, but this season they've regressed. So that it's going to be interesting to see what happens, but there seems to be this trend now in the Premier League to bring in these ex-Bundesliga managers and those with Bundesliga's knowledge, be it ex-players or managers from the Bundesliga into English football at the moment. So that seems to be an ongoing trend that will seem to be continuing. That's the fourth ex-Bundesliga manager or assistant manager now in the league with Guardiola, Klopp and Wagner. We now have Huijsen Hartl. So there seems to be a trend there. We'll see how long term that trend becomes. On other news, the NHL is getting very, very interesting. We saw the Nylander, whatever you want to call it, deal. What is really striking about this is Seattle has been confirmed as the next team, but they're coming in a year later, and there's the massive chance now of a labour stoppage or lockout or player strike or some kind of disagreement when the CBA is up, the collective bargaining agreement. If you're new to the NHL or you don't know much about it, we've had 3 major lockouts in 20 odd years, in 24 years. So in my lifetime, we've had a strike and 3 lockouts, including 1 whole season and 2 half seasons lost to basically strike action. It's really interesting. Nylander's contract has a big signing on bonus, which the richer teams can afford and the poorer teams cannot. And this has been discussed at length by a lot of people. And I think signing on bonuses will be a thing for the future to look out for when it comes to NHL contracts. That's going to be on the table. We know that Olympic participation, the World Cup of Hockey, the World Championships, all that kind of participation from these players from the NHL will be on the table because when it comes to the World Championships and the Olympics, the European-based players do not have these restrictions in place against them from going and representing their country at international tournaments. The NHL players tend to. So that's up for debate. There's a hot debate there on player participation in the World Championships and the Olympics. The NHL obviously has a lot of expansion fees, a vast amount of money, nearly over one point something billion dollars. Hello there. So the NHL has earned a lot of money from expansion fees, and they can't risk these new fans they brought in. But talking of a salary cap, and as we have a football fan here who's new to the channel, salary cap. The NHL, the NBA, the NFL, all these North American sports have a salary cap. The NRL in Australia has a salary cap. The Premier League and European football does not. And my fear is that they should have brought in a salary cap or some kind of spending cap. There isn't financial fair play a long time ago. We know financial fair play is a broken system. UEFA has admitted it's a broken system. Well, I've got your reply from the video. So the financial fair play, the UEFA have admitted it's a broken system. So what they're doing to fix that, they're bringing in another European competition that is devaluing the European competitions we already have and is not helping the smaller nations leagues and the smaller nations improve the quality of their leagues to make them at Champions League, Europa League standard, because they're never going to be able to get to the Europa or Champions League standard because Europa League 2 is going to be a fail. I wonder what TV company picks that up. But no, the UEFA have come out and admitted financial fair play doesn't work. And with the allegations against PSG and Man City, coming to light, and the way they punished AC Milan, and the way they haven't punished teams like Real Madrid and Barcelona from getting state-sponsored aid when they had financial issues. It's a flawed system. They've admitted it's a flawed system. They're not doing anything to fix the system. With players' wages and player salaries getting to where they are, there is a finite amount of money. Finite amount of money. There's only a limited amount of money in the world. Something has to happen soon. I understand, obviously, that you interesting. Your channel name, I can't remember, what is it? Li9MT. So we'll call you Limpet. Anyway, it's interesting that you obviously came across the channel, stumbling across my Tranmere Rovers promotion video that I did, and I noticed suddenly a lot of my older videos were getting view count. So I realised something was up. I thought, someone's going to subscribe here. Someone's having a little look-see. Yeah, I'm really interested. Some of my older stuff still gets watched. I'm still surprised that some of my Rugby League World Cup videos from last year are getting views. Popular that they are. I'm really surprised that some of my old stuff. I'm really self-critical of some of my older content. My older content, some of it's really bad, like really horrifically bad, and I'm really surprised people keep watching and liking it. I will say this: my views are subjective. This is what I see. This is not necessarily what everyone else agrees with. I will say that I've had some trolls. Feel free to disagree with me if you think I'm wrong on a subject. I had a friend who played is it Stockport or what's the other? There's you got Stockport County, and there's another team in Merseyside. A friend of mine used to play for Stockport County back in the day before they went into the non-league, or when they were in the non-league. No, I've got a connection with Merseyside with my dad's family. I've got some friends from the Merseyside area. I think it's interesting that Tranmere ended up in the situation. Yeah, Southport, that's the one. A friend of mine used to play for Southport in the non-league. Stockport County is the wrong one. Ooh, I had a brain fade. My friend used to play for Southport. He now lives back in Merseyside and has a young family now and moved away. But he moved down here for family reasons with his old man. And he moved back up with his partner to Liverpool, the Liverpool area, and got a family. But he played for Southport for a little while. He also played locally here in Berkshire, non-league as well. So I have a connection with the Northwest through family and friends. It's really surprising to me how people forget about clubs like Tranmere and clubs like Bury and clubs like your Preston North Ends and your Blackpools. Those clubs around the bigger clubs. But it's good to see Tranmere back in the Football League. I think when I was really into football at its peak, when I was more interested in football than I am now, Tranmere were what we would class as League One Championship kind of level, and they have obviously had some harder times, but there is obviously a massive bigger fan base than people realise in the Northwest for Tranmere. When I did the video, I was surprised with how well it did for view count, and I was surprised with the amount of interest in the video. Yes, that's going to be an interesting replay. If I look at the weather outside, now I live in the southeast, so I live just west of London in Berkshire. The weather outside is pretty horrific, I'm not going to lie. And even the lower league clubs don't want this fixture congestion if they can avoid it. But it brings in revenue, and revenue is something that these lower league clubs are screaming out for right now. Now, it's interesting. I don't know if you're going to be playing Tottenham home or away. If you're playing at Wembley, that's going to be a day out. But if you're playing at home, that's going to be really interesting as well. Prenton Park is a very close ground. Atmosphere there is intense at times. I wish more grounds were like that. But that's going to be a really interesting secondary Merseyside derby, so to speak. Obviously, everyone thinks Merseyside derby, Liverpool, Everton. Like Tranmere have a big following in Merseyside, in the Birkenhead, Wirral, and people forget about that. I think it's going to be looking at the weather and how bad it's been. I don't know when the replay is when they fixtured it, but the weather is getting worse. Last night I went to see a friend who lives 9 miles away. Now, the only way to get to my friend's house is on the back country A roads and B roads. And I tell you now, that was a fun experience. Hopefully that will be a televised game. They will televise one of the replays, and having two teams from the same area, from Merseyside, that will definitely gather interest. Tranmere, I know, have a bigger fan base than people realise, but I was so surprised with the amount of viewers that watched that video. And you know, football isn't the only sport I cover. If you look at my playlists, I cover everything. I really do, and I enjoy other sports more. And the sports that I enjoy more, ironically, have more view counts than the football videos I have. It's just so ironic. But today it's been mostly football videos I've been putting up because they're the big stories of the day. I don't follow every single story. I don't follow every single event. But what is interesting is Peter Kenyon involved in the takeover bid for Newcastle, and I hope Mike Ashley gets out of town. I hope he goes, but he's got links to Rangers as well. So it would be interesting to see what happens with the Newcastle United bid as well. And no, the FA Cup, I think the sadness is in the last 20 years, because UEFA got rid of the Cup Winners' Cup, it has devalued somewhat the domestic cup competitions over here, not just in England, but across Europe. And now UEFA are coming out to stem this threat of a breakaway Super League. They have said that they are going to look into fiddling with domestic competition to have more European games, which I think is completely stupid. Your bread and butter is your league rivals. Your bread and butter is your league campaign, and your European campaigns are a bonus. They've completely, again, UEFA, very reactionary organisation. They're not proactive, very corrupt organisation, as we know. And they've even admitted with financial fair play that a previous UEFA employee helped clubs break financial fair play rules. So I don't know what's going to happen there. And when you joined the live stream, I was talking about the NHL and a salary cap and a collective bargaining agreement and possibility of a strike action. We are seeing possibility of strike action in football with La Liga and the PFA and other issues going on. La Liga wanting to take a regular season game to America this January between Girona and Barcelona, and the players are going, we don't want to do that. We're not happy with that. And they say we've got to put the fans first, which is a first for any player to actually, rather than thinking of their wallets, thinking of the fans who fill their wallets. It's amazing. But they're threatening strike action. The PFA over here is in crisis, complete crisis. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But I can see if the La Liga players oh no, it's to do with money. It's La Liga had an obviously had an agreement with this media. I've done videos on it, so feel free to find them in the football playlist. I have done videos on it, but basically, La Liga obviously wanted to sell the TV rights to the US, and in order to do that, they had to find a broadcast carrier that would cover La Liga, and interestingly, La Liga is no longer shown on Sky anymore, which is great because I hate Sky Sports with a passion, and BT Sport, they're shit. But that's my view. You'll find out my views on TV rights, very anti-subscription, put it behind paywall, hate it. And they try to sell. They signed an agreement with this US media group, and part of that agreement for a 15-year agreement was to have games in the regular season outside of Spain or Spanish territories in North Africa. And this is never been done before. Now, rugby has done this. Rugby has taken regular season games to the US to mix crowds. Sometimes it's a good crowd. Sometimes it's hardly any people show up. So they are taking a risk with the crowd numbers. Yes, they have to be aware that there is a big American fan base for European football, because when I watch the NHL games and NFL games, and I say this honestly as a fan who does watch a bit of NFL and a lot of NHL, when you're watching their broadcasts, be it replay broadcasts on various websites that I found that are not legitimate, or actually on Free Sports, you will see if you're watching the North American feed, you'll see adverts for European football, be it the Premier League, La Liga, Bundesliga, Serie A, League One, some of the other minor European leagues. There's a big North American interest in European football. Premier League is one of the top. La Liga is in there. They already have individual broadcasters like NBC and Fox already showing Premier League games or La Liga games. La Liga wanted monopoly rights, so only one TV company shows their rights. They don't have to, mix the rights up. And part of that was to play regular season games. the Spanish FA initially was signing off on the deal. Right, we got a TV rights deal. It's great for the Spanish game. It brings money into our pockets as well. What they didn't realise was the reaction from the players' union and the players so against. If you cannot get the players on board, it's not going to work. I wouldn't say it has begun to take over America. A lot more kids are playing it in America. There are issues with the structure of the MLS and US Federation and the other minor leagues in America. There's a big structure problem there. If I can get back on the Man United Arsenal line of predictions, I don't have any. I don't follow either side. What I will say is, under Unai Emery, the players at Arsenal really enjoy playing for him. Under Jose Mourinho, Christ, they hate playing for him. This is a make or break. This is the game that will make or break. I think Mourinho's, whether he stays or goes. I think if he lost against Southampton, he was on tenterhooks. A draw is still not great, and they had to come from behind, and that cost Mark Hughes' job. I do think this could make or break Man United and Arsenal season. If Arsenal win this game, they beat Tottenham, so they have no fear of any opposition. They're on a good winning run, an unbeaten run. Sorry, I think Arsenal are going to do them. I think Arsenal will win by 2-3 goals. I think Man United under Mourinho is not a happy club. I don't really know who I would put in goal or who I would pay in defence. De Gea has been linked with a move to PSG in the summer. Even if he has extended his contract clause, it just means more money they can get for him. The defence doesn't look great. Lindelof has improved, but he's not a Jaap Stam. He's not an Nemanja Vidic type player. He's not a leader. He's a doer. There is no leader in that back four. The midfield stuttering, and Sanchez overpaid and crap. I could not tell you the prediction on the lineups. I think Arsenal will go with a very balanced lineup. They're not going to make too many changes. So if you've been following Arsenal over the last few weeks, months, Unai Emery, I think, has got a very balanced side now. He doesn't tinker as much, so he goes with the side that's in form. Man United, it all depends on Pogba, Mata, and Sanchez. If Sanchez and Pogba can pull one out of the hat, and Martial can be given some ball, they might have a chance. But Pogba cannot defend, yet Mourinho keeps putting him in defensive situations, which is against his strength. If you have Pogba and Fellaini midfield, put Fellaini in the box on the defensive side of things and keep Pogba further up, so Fellaini or another midfielder can find that ball to Pogba to then link in the play. It's plain and simple. It's basic. And Mourinho is keep asking him stuff that he's just not skilled at doing. He cannot defend. We know he can't defend. That's a weakness for him. And if Mourinho was a decent manager in this sense, because he is a decent manager, but if he was actually a clued up manager, he would have worked with Pogba to go, right, let's see if we can get this defensive side of your game improved. He's not improving him defensively. He's putting him in a situation where he hasn't done the work to improve him. It doesn't work like that. Brian Clough, if he'd been given the England job, God knows. Honestly, sky's the limit. He would have probably meant that Nottingham Forest would have not had him as manager, possibly. And Forest might have taken a different direction because he wasn't taken as England manager, and his time at Leeds. His time at Leeds meant he didn't get the England job. That is it. His time at Derby, before and after Leeds, was brilliant, and his time at Nottingham Forest was brilliant. But because of that Leeds United job in the mid-70s, that is why he didn't get the England job, and that was a blessing in disguise for club football. Whether he would have won anything with the England players available at the time is up for debate, because the England sides in the 70s were always underwhelming. They never achieved anything. Post 1973, the England team until 1981 was full of talented players that could not achieve internationally, much like the Scottish side would always qualify for tournaments and then never achieve anything. I think Nottingham Forest would have a different history. I think Nottingham Forest would be worse off. England, God knows, it's hypothetical. It's trying to look at things in that kind of, with hindsight, we don't know. It might have been more of a disaster than the England managers we had in the 70s and 80s. God knows, it may not have worked because not all these players would have played on a Brian Clough at club level. It may not have worked at all. So that's an interesting one. The Damned United is a very, very good film. It's a very, very interesting thought. But honestly, hindsight's a great thing. But even then, there were so many uncertainties at the time. It could have been a lot different. But the England sides at the time, regardless who was in charge, regularly failed to qualify for tournaments. So it's one of them. A lot of good players at the time not qualifying for tournaments. A lot of good Scottish players at the time, they were qualifying for tournaments and then not progressing in tournaments. So British football at the time was domestically, really interesting to watch. But there were issues with finances, declining crowds, crowd trouble, hooliganism, poor infrastructure. Clubs going bust, much like they are now. And which ended up leading into the late 80s, 90s into the Premier League splitting away from the Football League and the FA having a very frosty relationship with the league clubs, which led to the formation of the Premier League. And TV rights was a big thing in that as well. And all-seater stadiums and football pricing and everything that we're arguing about today was the same arguments we were having 30 years ago. But it would have been interesting if Brian Clough had it. But again, that's one of the joys of sport is the unknown side of things. What Southgate is doing, he wasn't great at club level. International level, he's doing rather a good job. So some managers are more suited to club football than international football, and vice versa. I think Southgate suited to international football, not suited to club football as management. Just look at his time at Middlesbrough; it wasn't great. Let's be honest. Back onto the football growing in the US. Yes, the MLS is growing massively. It's expanding every year. David Beckham's got his Miami team starting the next couple of years. They've got OK on the stadium. So, the MLS is growing year on year. But at the same time, in the early MLS days, it almost completely folded after the first decade. So I've done a video on that. So feel free to check out my video on the history of the MLS, because that's really interesting to see the fact that clubs have gone out and then come back in, and there is a lower level of football below the MLS, but there isn't a promotion relegation system. The league had two options. What the MLS did wrong was they put these football teams in massive stadiums without really having a fan base. What Major League Rugby has done is, instead of setting up these teams and say, let's put them in a 60, 70,000 seater NFL stadium, which is what MLS did. Let's put them in a 4,000 to 5,000 seater small little college, high school stadium and grow small and then slowly grow. And Major League Rugby has been a runaway success this year. And has benefited the US national side with that extra professionalism at a local level, rather than their players playing all over the world. A lot of US players and Canadian players have come back to North America to play professionally because of Major League Rugby. MLS made a lot of mistakes in its early days. And it got to a point when David Beckham was signed by LA Galaxy. That was the crossroads point. And when they signed David Beckham, the popularity, people in America knew who he was because of his wife, Victoria Beckham. And they started tuning in. They saw what he could do with the dead ball, and they saw what he could do in open play. And then other big superstar players joined. And then the league went, right, we're going to go on crazy expansion. And teams have still gone out of business since expansion. But they've got on this decade and a half, 15 years or so of just expanding every year, just keep going. The issue with football in the US, or soccer as they would call it, is the failure of the national sides to qualify for the World Cup this summer. That was a big blow, because they consistently qualified for every tournament since 1990, including hosting it in 94. And they're going to be hosting it again in about 8 years. There's also issues within the structure of the governance of the game, because the MLS is not actually governed by the US Federation, US Soccer, much like the Premier League isn't properly governed by the FA. It's sort of governed by itself to a point. So there were governance issues with the MLS, massive governance issues. And the quality level isn't great. If you were to put the top Red Bull, New York Red Bull, LA Galaxy against, I would say, let's say Man City, you can tell what the score is going to be, because New York City Red Bull was owned by Man City anyway. But if you were to put them against each other, it would, on a competitive Anglo-American Cup, for example. Let's say the North Atlantic Cup. Let's say the top four teams in the MLS regular season play the top four teams in the Premier League. In the, let's say, the off season, a little off season tournament, but it's competitive, so you have to put out your best sides, even though it's the summer. The Premier League sides would win heavily. The Spanish sides, if you were to put a La Liga side out, would win heavily. French side, even like a Nice or a Montpellier from France, an average French side would beat an MLS side. There is no comparable. There is no comparable there. Hey Mike, how you doing? Yeah, it's my birthday tomorrow, so I thought I'll do a live stream tonight. So I do my 1,000th video tomorrow. Yes, my birthday tomorrow. I'm 29, so I thought I'll do my 999th video in this live stream, and then tomorrow, the 1,000th video is the happy birthday video. And I've been doing all right. Weather's crap. I've got my physio doctor's appointment at the hospital Friday. So we'll find out how buggered my shoulder really is this time, because we're going for more intense physio, which is sort of, I understand why, but it's not great. So yeah, for all those who are saying, some of these players who play with injuries are warriors, yeah, it's the aftermath. Talking about player welfare, there's a big debate about concussions in multiple sports right now. Thank you. I wouldn't say it's some achievement. Some days I haven't done. I mean, there was a period of time where I didn't do videos for a few weeks or a month or so, and there are some days when I'm doing like 12 videos a day. So it averages out. If you look at it from April 21st last year to now, that's an average of like 4 videos a day, something like that. It's about it's a year and a half, year and 8 months. That's 165. About an average of 2 to 3 videos a day since I've been doing content. So it adds up pretty quick. It was only the other day I was on 800 and something, so it's really added up really quick. If you average out 2, 3, 4, 5, if you average it out, it adds up very quickly. But the player welfare side of it, when people say these rugby players and these ice hockey players are warriors because they're playing hurt, they're playing with a little niggle. Trust me, I'm the guy who played with a little niggle at amateur level, that I'm in agony daily with my back, my ankles, my knee, my shoulder, my neck. Player welfare is crucial, and when players are not 100% fully fit, and I understand the drive and the commitment, and yeah, that shows a true warrior. The best example I can give of a player playing when he shouldn't have in any sport, a guy called Mario Lemieux. He played basically with a buggered back for 2-3 years, until the point where, as an NHL superstar, he couldn't even lace up his skates, or when they were traveling between city and city on an away trip, couldn't put his luggage in the overhead locker. His teammates would have to do it for him. He had to have a couple of operations, and then he had a serious complication with one of his spinal operations where he had a massive blood infection and it killed him. So he missed half the season because he almost died. And then he had cancer, and then he missed 4 weeks whilst having treatment for his cancer, and then carried on playing whilst having chemotherapy, which was insane. And then he took a year out because his body was broken to fully recover from his cancer treatment and his back surgery. And then he came back, and then he was told he had a heart condition, and he carried on playing. So yeah, there are some athletes who really do above and beyond for sport. Insane that is. But yes, tomorrow we would have hit 1,000 videos, and it'd be my 29th birthday, which is kind of an achievement in itself. I haven't obviously got the subscriber count that I would have liked by this point, but at the same time, I never thought I'll get monetized the first time around. So I'm secretly actually quite chuffed with how the channel has grown over the recent year or so. This time last year, I think I was on 50 subscribers or something. I'm gonna have to look at the subscriber count for this time last year, but it was nowhere near as high as it was now. This is the highest we've ever been. We're pushing 400 subs. So I think we're like 15 subscribers away now from 400. So we're nearly halfway there. We are nearly halfway to monetization, which is an amazing thing in itself. It's taken a lot of hard work. But hey, the sport keeps throwing up these fun stories for me to look at, and some crazy matchups. And when I get to watch live sport, some crazy scorelines. I mean, if you're an NHL fan, just look at last night and the Calgary Flames and the Columbus Blue Jackets having a 9-6 final score. I mean, that is insane. End-to-end open hockey with physicality attached as well, but 30 what was it, 15 goals or something? That's insane. That is bananas in a professional top level match. 15 goals being scored in 60 minutes is complete and utter insanity. But it's fun to watch, and it's fun. And unfortunately, the Bruins lost last night 5-0 to the Florida Panthers, which is again unfortunate, but at the same time it shows the parity in the league. And while we all dislike Gary Bettman, and I dislike Gary Bettman and the NHL league head office, I will say this: expansion has actually benefited rather than hindered the league. I'm not going to lie. NHL expansion has helped the league massively, and it's grown the fan base massively. Where I live, when I go to my local ice rink to watch my local team play, I see every NHL jersey, past and present, even teams that no longer exist. I see jerseys from all around the world. Hockey is a global sport without really being a global sport. It does transcend nationality. And you know what? I've discussed the lockouts on my channel, and I looked at the 2004 lockout, and there were a significant number of NHL regular players who came over here to play. And I did a video on it. I looked at their numbers, and they were more the grinder, enforcer, stay-at-home defenseman types. But NHL quality players coming over to the UK to play for a season benefited the game, not in the short term over here in the UK, but in the long term. In the short term, it didn't really benefit the game and actually caused more issues for the sport over here in the UK. But in the long term, it did benefit the quality level. Well, the most the biggest financial team, money wise, is the Rangers are worth the most. The Maple Leafs have the biggest fan base. So the New York Rangers are the wealthiest team, just because it all depends on the Canadian dollar. 3 years ago, the Maple Leafs were the wealthiest team. But the Toronto Maple Leafs have the biggest fan base, and the New York Rangers have the biggest budget. Let's just say that they're worth the most. They're worth over $1 billion. I think 1.3 billion US dollars is the value of the Rangers, and the Maple Leafs is 1.25 billion, something like that. So they're the big teams are worth big money. Chicago's worth $1 billion. Montreal's worth just over $1 billion. And basically any of the original six. Detroit is the weakest of the original six, so they're the poorest. They're still in the top 10 of value. The poorest team, value-wise, is Arizona, valued at around 300 million US dollars. Although that value is slowly going up because they're winning more games this year, and they've got more fans watching games this year than in previous seasons. The teams that are at the bottom of the pile in the NHL for value, apart from Winnipeg, because the Jets are a small market because they have the smallest building, and they are a small market in the sense that the fan base is there, but the NHL classes it as a small market. It's weird. Even though Winnipeg is a mad city for hockey, they class it as a small market. Apart from them, and they sell out every game. We've sold out every game since the team went back to Winnipeg in 2011. All the other teams that are worth less than, I think, 400 to 500 million, they're generally the ones that haven't had playoff success, haven't had a winning record, generally near the bottom of the divisions and the overall league table season on season. Arizona haven't been in the playoffs for a while. Carolina haven't been in the playoffs for a while, and they had one of the lowest attendances as well. So you look at Florida, even though they won last night, they were close to the playoffs by a point last year, haven't been in the playoffs for a while. When they do get the playoffs, they never win in the playoffs, apart from one season. So the lack of playoff success also has a bearing on the value of the team. Pittsburgh 15 years ago were broke. They were worth even less than Arizona are now in real terms. So the Pittsburgh Penguins, well-known team, virtually bankrupt 15 years ago. It was because Mario Lemieux came out of retirement, become player owner, that the team survived. So if it wasn't for him, the team would have gone. But yeah, no, baseball. The Yankees and the Red Sox are the two well-known ones. Hence why they've got this 2-game series next year in London. And we've heard no more about the planning for that. So that's going to be interesting how they get that into the sporting calendar, considering that the weather is, well, British right now. It's raining a lot. And Major League Baseball obviously had plans to play here before in 2017 and then pulled out at the last minute. So I'm surprised. I'm not necessarily the most massive fan of taking these games from the major leagues over here year on year and making it more of a regular thing rather than a special occasion. And the debate, well, why does football not do the same thing? Well, yeah, because it's complicated. I am surprised with the trend with taking major league sports to Europe, that Major League Baseball has waited this long. and has pulled out before. I'm really surprised with their league office, with their thinking. The NFL, even though I'm not a massive fan of the NFL, the way they've done with the London series, they've knocked that out the ballpark. I'm going to do a video if will Wembley Stadium ever host a Super Bowl, because I think it will. I think London, UK will have a Super Bowl in the next 10 years. The NHL going to other European nations and actually has been to the UK as well with the O2 and playing pre-season games against the Belfast Giants. NHL teams have come over here to play in pre-season games. The NBA at the O2. So, the Major League Baseball really missed a trick in the last decade and a half, 2 decades. Really has missed a trick. But there are other issues with Major League Baseball at the moment. Massive issues with financial structure and the ability of teams to stay competitive. There's no parity. It's the big teams such as the Yankees and the Red Sox can afford to pay who they want, and the smaller teams cannot. Basically, it's a very unbalanced league when it comes to distribution of TV revenues and funds, like the league revenues distribution. And there is no salary cap, so it's a completely unbalanced league where the wealthy teams stay wealthy and the poorer teams cannot compete because they can't sign that lineup. When they do get a new young prospect coming through, he gets snapped up for big money by one of the bigger teams, and they can't develop that player. The big team takes him. The Yankees, though, also, you look at baseball caps. I can't remember where I put my Yankees baseball cap. It's really annoying. I had a Yankees baseball cap. It is somewhere in my room, and it's an older, new age one. A lot of people in the 90s and the early 2000s, bought New York Yankees stuff, not because they like baseball. It's because the New York Yankees realized they could market themselves as a fashion accessory, and they sold so many T-shirts, hats. I used to have New York Yankee T-shirts. The New York symbol, it was big in the 90s and the 2000s. A lot of kids, a lot of teenagers were buying Yankees gear. Even now, I see a lot of people my age wearing Yankees gear who don't actually watch baseball. They just wear it for the stylistic factor. That's another reason why the Yankees are so well known, is because they sold their brand to make money. Their branding rights are in. Whoever's in their marketing suite is a genius. I don't know what the interest for the Major League Baseball in London is going to be. There is a big US and Canadian expat community in the southeast. There's a big expat community of many ex-Commonwealth and Commonwealth nations and Anglo-Saxon nations in the southeast because of London and the M4 and M3 corridors and the tech corridor going up to Cambridge. There is a big North American expat community. There's a big South African community. There's a big Australasian, Australia and New Zealand community as well, and South Sea Island. A lot of these people have come over because of the oil industry, because a lot of head offices in London. The tech industry, from London to Cambridge, there's the tech corridor, the M4 and M3 corridors. So a lot of these, I had American neighbours for a while who rented my friend's house for like 2 years. There's a lot of Americans here. I wouldn't be surprised if their kids want to go. A lot of Americans from New York do actually live, and Boston live in London. So you're going to have that expat community, and that community with links to the New York Boston area. I'm not surprised. I'll be interested to see what the capacity they've the pre-sales obviously sold out. They got an official sale on Thursday, but it'll be interesting to see what the capacity they reset the capacity for the London Stadium is, what the reset capacity will be. Because it's primarily athletics and football, although rugby's been played there as well. So it's a rectangular pitch. They've got to make it more of a square, sort of hexagonal diamond shape because of the pitching mound and other of the various layout of the baseball pitch. So that's going to be interesting how they put the capacity at. That's going to be interesting. Bearing in mind also it's taking place during the Cricket World Cup next summer as well. So that's going to be a clash. And cricket is more popular than baseball in this country for fan base. So it's going to be interesting. Firstly, do they sell out both games? And secondly, how big a clash will that be with the Cricket World Cup and the TV rights for it as well? That's another big question, is who's going to actually broadcast these games live. baseball is an exceptionally long-winded game. Cricket, you have sessions and they come in and off, and if it's T20, it could be over in a flash. One day it could be over in a flash. Test match, there could be a batting collapse. Baseball is really long-winded. Really takes time. I've found a couple of websites to watch full match replays. They cut out the ad breaks. Even then, baseball, you're looking at several hours of broadcast feed for an inning, let alone all the innings. So if it goes to 18 innings and it's tied, that's 2 days worth of play in a game. That could be all day, and it's going to be interesting to see if the British fans can put up with all the breaks in play. So that's the American fans will, but it will all be looking at the TV audience. Will they be willing to put up with all the breaks in play? Will the TV audience stay tuned in for the entire game? This is what I think. I'm not 100% certain what's going to happen with Major League Baseball coming to London. I understand it. I think it's a 3-year plan, so they intend to come back for the next 2 seasons after next season as well. But it's going to be interesting to see the uptake on TV viewership, ticket applications, because it's the Red Sox and the Yankees. People know who they are. Let's try and get teams that people don't know who they are, like the Orioles, for example. The Marlins from Miami, something different than we already know who these teams are, because we know that the Red Sox and the Yankees have marketed themselves very, very well over the last 20 years and sold a lot of stuff because people see it more as fashionable to wear it rather than actually supporting the Yankees or the Mets or the Red Sox, whatever team it is that's very popular. My opinions on the Bees last weekend's results were shit. I think the Basingstoke-Bracknell game was just spiky and nasty. I only read bits and pieces. I haven't seen all the fight footage. I haven't seen all the highlight footage. But from everything I read on Twitter and everything I followed on British Hockey Fights and other Twitter feeds and other social media outlets, that was a very chippy game, very nasty game. There's going to be suspensions coming out of that for Martin and the Basingstoke player who headbutted Martin. Josh Martin throwing a linesman out the way, that's an automatic suspension. I think for striking an official, that can be a lengthy suspension. Headbutting. Now, I've seen a headbutt before from Callum Patterson when he was playing for Sheffield against Bracknell, which started a bench clearance, which led to a few players getting in the old EPIHL days, which was a bit more professional, getting a few little fines and suspensions. Headbutting is not cool. Not cool. That's going to be a lengthy sit out. I don't know the culture of the Basingstoke dressing room. I know a lot of those players did play for Bracknell last year, and a lot of the players played for Bracknell played for Basingstoke last year. So there is that kind of, you're the rejects of this team, you're the rejects of that team. It's always been a feisty rivalry, always has, always will. At one point, both teams were owned by the Taylor family, and that led to financial mess for both teams that almost forced both teams out of business 10 years ago. And that led to Bracknell having financial problems earlier into this, more recently. So there's that backdrop to it as well. A lot of, the teams don't like each other. The fan bases, while we love the banter when it comes to game night, don't like each other. If you like the last Basingstoke Bracknell game at Bracknell, I was the guy singing "We've taken all your players" as we scored the second goal. So there is a bit of banter, but it can be nasty. I've been watching the rivalry now for the better part of a decade since Basingstoke came back into the second tier of British hockey from the Elite League, and I was watching it before they went up to the Elite League as well. It's been a heated rivalry for a long, long time. The Peterborough one. Peterborough are, I think, the best team in the league this year. I think they're the most consistent team in the league this year. I think league form, yes. Playoffs is a different kettle of fish, but league form, they are the best team at the moment form-wise. They're better than us. They're better than Swindon. They're better than Basingstoke. They're better than Streatham and the Raiders. Milton Keynes and Invicta, Milton Keynes are solid, if not outstanding. Invicta are the whipping boys. We know Invicta's struggles, and it's unfortunate they've got these struggles, but it is what it is. It's going to be interesting, watching the rest of the season and what happens. Bracknell got a game against the Raiders on Saturday, which I'll be going to. That's going to be a real tasty encounter. Those teams don't like each other. I'm going to be interested to see what the disciplinary action is taken So it's going to be interesting to see the disciplinary action taken against both Morris and Martin. Josh Martin is a feisty, agitating kind of player. He's a good two-way player. He's a good high-energy player, but he's been involved in a few distasteful incidents the last couple of years since he's played for Bracknell. So on that sense, I'm keeping myself a bit guarded with what happens with him. I think he's learnt some of his antics from his call-ups to the Elite League with the Coventry Blaze. So Josh Martin, he might have learnt a few underhand tactics in the Elite League with a few games with Coventry. Liam Morris, I don't know enough about the player to pass judgment, but the fact he headbutted a player, that is bad. And if we're looking at how other leagues and other instances have been, suspendable offences, we've seen knees to head last year, which got, I think, 5 games for kneeing to the head. That would be, I think, very similar. I think he's going to get a bit of a ban. And if we go with what happened with Frankie Bakalik last year and his length of suspension, or amount of suspensions he had, I do think, there's going to be I think past behaviour, being suspended before in the same season, not just in the past, but in the same season. He's going to look at a lengthy spell not playing. But I can't pass judgment until I actually see the fight on Hockey Fights UK, which I will look at. I will. But there was a similar incident in the Slough Jets Bracknell Hornets game where a player was taken out on a backball with a serious spinal injury. So I was at my mate's flat and the ambulances were passing by. Another friend was at the game messaging me saying that something bad's happened. So there was a player carted off in the Slough Jets Bracknell Hornets game on a backboard. So there have been some nasty incidents this season. And last season when the Slough Jets played the Invicta Mustangs, a player ended up with brain damage. So after getting basically was decapitated by a stick. So we have seen some pretty nasty things in the last couple of years in British hockey. I would say the last 5 or so years, there's been some really nasty incidents that don't shine the game in a positive light. A lot of them happen in the Elite League, but some have happened in the National and the old EPIHL, and it doesn't make the game look great, if I'm honest. It doesn't. And the sport is trying to grow in this country again, and while fans like a bit of the old fisticuffs and the odd intense, these intense games, and it's expected, headbutting is not where you want to go, and manhandling officials is not the way you want to go, because that just reminds me of the Wade Belak fight in 2004-2005 where he punched an official during a fight and got a lengthy ban. Oh well, Bracknell fans had to pre-order their tickets; they couldn't buy on the door, which is not a system you want to have. You want to be able to have those fans turn up on the night and buy tickets. That's what I do. If you can't buy on the door, that's not a great look. Even if you are having ring issues, it's not a great look. I think that's a complete failure by the rink operators and the match night operators to okay, if you can't pre-book, if you can only buy on the night, that's a bit of a shame, really. Very rarely have I pre-booked tickets. That's very, very rare that I pre-book tickets. Exceptionally rare that I do so. I've only done it a couple of times. Very, very rare that I do so, but it is what it is. I might get a season ticket for next year or the rest of the season to avoid all the sweaty QE people, but it is what it is. I'm not yay or nay against it. But there we go. On that, I'll have to look at the Hockey Fights to see what actually happened. But from everything I've read online, there was a headbutt and there was a contact with the official. So both players are going to be in a lot of trouble. I don't know how important Josh Morris is to the Basingstoke style of play, but Josh Martin Liam Morris, sorry. Josh Martin is a very important shutdown player for the Bracknell Bees. Liam Morris, I don't know what his role is with the Basingstoke Bison and how important he is to how they play, but he's had a suspension this season. He's probably going to get another one. So we'll have to see what happens. How important he is to your team, I don't know. I don't see enough of obviously Basingstoke to pass judgment, but I can see lengthy suspension coming his way if he's headbutted a player and has had a suspension this season. This is like parallels of Frankie Bakalik last year with the elbow to the head and then another serious incident at the end of the season. And in fact, Frankie had 3 suspensions last season. So this is going to be interesting to see what the outcome is and how serious the league really is about dirty foul play being taken out of the game. And hockey in general, the sport in general has this issue where it's inconsistent with discipline, and length of suspension or not suspending. There is a lack of consistency, and fans are getting worldwide and following all leagues are getting a little bit how do I put it, befuddled by some of the inconsistent calls when it comes to discipline, and inconsistent suspensions or fines, or not suspending at all when a similar hit has led to a suspension and this hit doesn't. And it it's going to be interesting. But I was really surprised to see both players thrown out of the game for fighting. Normally, you just get 2+2, so obviously that there were other things going on there. But from all accounts, it was not a game played in a happy spirit. It was played with intent to both sides don't like each other. And I can see that carrying on throughout the rest of the season. I can see that later on in the season getting heated. Playoffs, regular season, I can see that getting out of hand again. Next time the teams play, be it in Basingstoke or in Bracknell, I can see further issues where it could get out of hand. And that's partly due to the refereeing being so poor. This is another issue that British hockey has, is the refereeing standard. While the game is growing massively and interest is growing massively with Liam Kirk getting drafted and other players who coached or played in Europe or who could be scouted by NHL franchises, the game is growing again and has been growing now for the last couple of years. But our British teams in the Elite League are getting better. There's more young British talent playing at the highest level. I think the refereeing standard hasn't caught up. There's not enough referees who referee with common sense. And if you are going to referee by the rule but be consistent, the refereeing standard is too inconsistent and is not good enough. So if the game is growing, the refereeing standard has to improve alongside. Otherwise, it just undervalues the game that we play and follow and watch. Martin's very good at crashing the net, and he will wind up the opposition goaltender. Metum has got a very short temper. As a Bracknell fan, I saw him at a game against Streatham where he lost his shit within the first 5 minutes. He was already losing his stuff, slashing, pushing. He got a fighting major against Streatham. He nearly got thrown out of the game actually against Streatham this time last year. Me and a friend went to a game in London, watched Bracknell play Streatham. He almost got thrown within the first 5 minutes of the game. Streatham wound him up, and because Josh Martin knows this, I'm not sure if Metum was the most popular guy in the Bracknell dressing room last year, or because in the game the other week, which was the 2-0 win for Bracknell, very early on they were getting under Metum, trying to get under Metum's skin. This dates back to his time at Sheffield in the EPIHL days. Bearing in mind, I've seen Metum fight. He will fight. He has got a short temper. I've seen him fight before. He's a prickly character. He's very similar to Coquelin. He will get his blocker and his stick, and he will take a slash at the back of a player's knees, and he will give a face wash, and he will bark at the referees and the linesmen. He has that temperament where if he's playing well, he's good. But when you get under his skin or he gets a little bit agitated, his emotion gets the better of him, and then the game gets more fiery. I'll have to look at the full footage that was taken and decide for myself who's to blame. I haven't seen the incident yet, but when we had Frankie Bakalik, I was always going, what's he going to do next? Just because I support a team doesn't mean I like every player on that team. And Josh Martin is one of those players who is a physical player. He is, end-to-end kind of player. He's a two-way player. He's taken some big hits this season. He's dished out some big hits this season. And he'll skate all day. He may not be the quickest, but he'll skate all day. And I think his work ethic and work rate is why he's had call-ups to the Coventry Blaze on two-way this year. So he's been noticed by bigger teams. And it's a good sign that, well, Doug Shepherd says he doesn't like the players to fight so much. But in this league, if you're soft, you're going to get beaten up. We saw that when Lucas Smittle was in charge of Bracknell. That not that he didn't care that they fought didn't, but he was trying to play less physical when half the players on his roster were fighters, or could fight. The team we have now, a lot of the players will drop the gloves, even the skill players. So I understand that he wants to, avoid taking silly penalties, and for the most part of the season we have. But very similar to Basingstoke last year, they were seen to have that soft underbelly. And with the games they lost because they didn't want to stand up for themselves. And 90%, 95% of players like a fight. They do. They don't want to have it out of the game. And fighting is already up in the British leagues from last year and the year before. It may be a bit down in the NHL, but it's up in other leagues. And I don't know. I don't know. I get that he doesn't like the players fighting as much, but even Malinik has lost his cool this season, and David Milner, the Swedish Dave as we call him, he's a two-way player who will throw the body around. So I don't know really. I think with the players he's got, like Scott Spearing and James Galazzi and Harvey Steads, and I just look at the Bracknell lineup and Painter and they all can fight. There's 5 or 6 players that will willingly, dive into the opposition's bench if they could. So, I don't know. I think we haven't had as many fights. Both beds can fight. They're small and scrappy. They can fight. They can throw big hits. They can fight. I I am surprised that he has this attitude in this level of British hockey where it's known to be tough and rumble and physical, and the fighting majors have gone up. Bearing in mind he was coaching in the EPIHL as well, when it was a very fighty league and there was a lot of fighting penalties. I think he's finding out that the roster he's got is a more fighty roster than he had last year because he's kept those hard nuts from Bracknell last year. The players he's retained from Bracknell last year, apart from Inglesby and what's his name? There's another young player who's gone to Basingstoke who had some fighting minutes. Inglesby can fight, Basingstoke, but the players he's kept, a lot of them, if you just look at their penalty minute totals, you just got a load of elite prospects and look how many penalty minutes Scotty Spearing and James Galazzi have between them. That'll make you blush. Bracknell's always had that kind of hard two-way forwards or defenseman who will drop the gloves at any opportunity. Always has, and always will. I think you just got to look at the history of Bracknell players. There's always been that player who's willing to drop the gloves throughout the team's history. Even the skill players have done it. So you've just got to look at the penalty minute records for some seasons and the team penalty minutes. There are players who will fight. Even the Thompson brothers have fought. So while he's not a fighting manager, you can't say it's going to work being soft in the league they're in. And if Bracknell and Peterborough and if Basingstoke get a rink sorted out and the elite league keeps expanding, you look at the league above and how many fights they have. Doug Shepherd is going to probably fight himself out of a job because it's the style of hockey in this country. There's more fights than there were a couple of years ago at this level, partly due to the EPIHL sides dropping down and the coaches encouraging more of their players to be more physical, to match up for the lack of skill and the skill disparity in the National League, which needs restructuring anyway. But if Hull and Bracknell and Peterborough and if Basingstoke get a rink sorted out, decide to go, the Elite League decides to invite them back up, or they meet the requirements to go back up to the Elite League, or the top level as we call it, because Bracknell obviously were invited to the Elite League before. It's a fighting league. You have to be physical to survive in that league. You have to be skillful, but you have to be physical as well. And I just don't. I can't. I think Doug Shepherd has got to be a bit more pragmatic in his coaching when it comes to this side of the game. While not every fan likes fighting, and it's not as bad as it was 20 years ago, I can assure you that it's still a very fighty league. The players he's got have got that spite about them. I think he's more don't take silly penalties with roughing or over physical play when it's unnecessary. I think that's more his mindset. I can get that. I've noticed this season over last season, there's less silly penalties being taken by Bracknell players. They are being a bit more disciplined off the puck when they're defending or when they're on the forecheck. I've noticed they're taking less silly penalties, but they are still a physical side. And there's, even Josh Smith's had a fight. He didn't even realise he was in a fight until he was halfway through. He didn't even have a chance to take his gloves off, but he was still flailing his arms and going for it. Possibly because he was concussed, but he didn't realise he was in a fight until he was actually in it. But I'll be at Saturday's game. I'll be watching with great enthusiasm. It's going to be, I won't be surprised if JJ Pitchley wants to start a fight with someone. Painter will probably, Sutton will probably get involved with him, or possibly Harvey. Harvey Stead can really fight. He goes for it. It's going to be interesting what happens basically on Saturday. I don't know what Basingstoke are playing. I will check out the Hockey Fights UK footage. But a headbutt is. I think Sutton's had a facial injury. He's been wearing a full face visor, so I think he's either had a jaw or a mouth injury. He's been wearing that for a couple of weeks. Either he's taken a puck to the face or it hits the face, and he's had some dental damage because he's been wearing a full visor, not caged visor, which says to me a jaw injury, possibly a broken jaw, fractured jaw, a couple of teeth knocked out, damage to his maybe stitches in the lip. Maybe that's reopened and has to be worked out again. But Painter is a fighter. He'll go. I saw him in pre-season. He dropped the gloves and got a misconduct for a late hit he charged in. It's going to be interesting to see, how Bracknell respond after two heavy defeats, considering they won in overtime against Swindon the weekend before, which was a great game. Well, it wasn't the best game, but the ending was intense. The first 60 minutes lacked intensity. That overtime period was brilliant. So there's going to be some interesting things to look at. It's been a very interesting season. I think Bracknell, this time last year, were on a very long losing streak. They've won some, lost some, so they're not as bad. They're more consistent this year, but we always have this mid-season wobble. It's a Bracknell thing to start the season really well and to finish the season really well, but in the middle just to go. I noticed that against Swindon they looked a little bit lacking intensity. And I would say this: it's a mid-season game. These sides know they're going to be in the playoffs. It's just about where they finish in the league structure. That's why I think Peterborough have kept that intensity level where Swindon, Bracknell, and Basingstoke sort of a little bit variable, and it depends on the night. But our record in Basingstoke isn't great. Not, the Bracknell record in Basingstoke in the last 5 years isn't great. So on that respect, there's that hoodoo to get over. But they've now got over their overtime hoodoo by beating Swindon. But they allow themselves to not get in the game and then be physically dominated, which surprises me with players like Galazzi, Spearing, Stead. Nags has got more physical as the season's gone on. Painter. The fact they were allowed to be dominated physically, this is where I think Doug Shepherd needs to be a bit more pragmatic with allowing that pushback, letting a player just get in there and give it a bunch of them, because I've noticed a few games where they look a bit aimless until that big hit comes. They've got to be a bit more on the front foot. But it's the mid-season. It's coming up to Christmas. A lot of players are obviously there because a lot of these players are part-time. They have other concerns with work and family, so they're thinking about Christmas. It's mid-season. Swindon looked exactly the same 2 weeks ago when we played them. They lacked intensity as well. That's why it was really, it was end to end. Both sides had the lead. Both sides threw away the lead. It's just going to be interesting. Obviously, I'm not sure if we're playing the Raiders or Invicta. I think we're playing Invicta. I think so. I'm going to double check. I've got the fixture list. Fixture list because I'm smart. No, we're playing Invicta, and then we're playing the Raiders. So yeah, we're playing Invicta. That's going to be a heavy scoreline. If Bracknell won it, they could put 10 past Invicta. But it's that time of year where it's a bit I wouldn't say meaningless games, but the intensity levels dropped a little bit. I would expect after the New Year's the intensity level to rise again. Streatham are a good side. They will give a very good account of themselves. When I've seen Streatham play, they've been competitive for the most part. Only 1 or 2 games I've seen them play against Bracknell where they were blown out. They have a good team philosophy and a good team unity there. And for those who want a London-based team in the Elite League, you've got 3 or 4 teams that play in London that all hate each other. So to get a unified fan base and to fill a 10,000-seater arena, it's going to be difficult. London is a very, very big city, and you've got to get it right. This is why I think Bracknell and Peterborough and Hull will go to the Elite League before there's a team in London. Because yes, you might have the O2, but you've got to be able to fill that arena and tick it appropriately. And will the O2 want to have an ice sheet down for half the year when they could do concerts or MMA or wrestling or boxing or music or stand-up comedy or whatever it may be? I don't know. Interesting it is to talk about hockey. There are other sports to talk about. I think it's nice to talk about hockey. It really is, and especially British hockey. It is. But another interesting thing talking about sport, the F1. After next year, there is no free-to-air TV rights in this country for F1. And this is a sport that's at a crossroads. When sport is at a crossroads, TV deals are important. And the Elite League getting its free sports TV deal was a shot in the arm, an injection in the arm for British ice hockey, positive, because crowd numbers are up. And they've been very, very good at how they've selected the rivalry games. The games they've selected to show have been they've really selected well. It's been a great advert for the sport and the league. I caught a couple of the third period of Guildford Coventry the other week when Guildford just annihilated Coventry at the beginning of the third period. So I was lucky to catch the end of that game. So I've been lucky in the occasional game that I've caught on Free Sports. Their hockey coverage is very, very good. Their NHL coverage is good. Their KHL and SHL coverage is good as well. So that's a positive for the sport. F1 as a sport has TV deal issues, and that stems from the previous ownership of F1 and Liberty Media. They haven't decided to renegotiate the contracts that were signed with Bernie Ecclestone. They've decided to honour them as is. So that's now leading to problems down the line with governance and the direction of the sport, and the sport risks its European fan base massively. Big problems. Right, so I'm going to call that live stream a day because I want to keep it a bit shorter than I used to give more people a chance to get their questions in. And I also need to check other things on the channel, see how some videos are doing, and check the comments and the messages, because I try my best to respond to as many comments and messages that I receive on the channel as possible. And so I'm going to have to do that. But I really appreciate, Taylor, all your questions recently on the hockey. That's brilliant. There will be a match review of the Bracknell Invicta game. That will be done. I'm expecting a Bracknell win. They have to respond to those 2 defeats. And if next time Bracknell play Basingstoke at home, feel free to come up to me and say hi, and we can discuss all things hockey and loads of other stuff like that. And we can get your views on a few bits and pieces. Hopefully I have a better phone by then. This phone just doesn't have the memory capacity to take YouTube anymore. It's just crap. It's just had it, but my upgrade isn't due for a while, so I might have to buy a new phone, which is going to be expensive and really a pain in the ass. The weather's crap, so I might go see my mate up in Maidenhead. So I won't necessarily be doing much. I don't think I'll be doing much. I've got physio Friday morning at 9:30, so I can't go out and have a few bevies, which is a bit annoying. So my birthday drinks will just have to be Friday night, Saturday night, basically. But for now, thank you for watching, guys. I appreciate all the questions. Really appreciate it. I only have one troll and Donald Trump fans, so there's always one of them trying to ruin YouTube for everyone else. And I'll have some more videos for you soon. Cheers, guys. See you later.